you're a photographer. You do a lot of work with different artists, just different people in general. And one thing that always gets me about like your work is the color grading. Like the color grading and the framing, I think is just like, it's always super crazy to me.
Thank you.
And I'm just kind of like a nerd for that kind of stuff, like especially as of recently.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask like, what is your process like when it comes to that? Like, what do you see that makes you decide to make the decisions that you make? With,
like the color grading,
yeah,
and like the framing.
Both of those things. Like, what do you see that makes you make those decisions?
Honestly, this is actually really funny. I'm a very intuitive shooter. It's not really planned. And it's funny because like people come into my DMs and they'll start saying like terms that I don't understand, and I'm just literally in Lightroom and I'm just playing. I just go in there and I play. So there's not really like, it's not premeditated. Like
I hear that.
I just get in there and I'm like, and it takes me a long time to edit because I'm in there and I'm just playing with everything until it looks good. Like I just pay attention to detail a lot. So, and when it comes to framing, it's just whatever I feel, oh, maybe it'll look good if I just do this. Yeah. And then it just happens that way. Like, not to sound, I feel like it sounds like pretentious, but it's
to be honest, it's like, I think most people that get into like an art form, like that's kind of how it goes. And that's kind of how you know that you have like a knack for it. If you can do that and it just looks like it looks good. Like no gas, but like it looks good. Thank you. Like one thing that I'll say is like when you were saying that, like I kind of found a parallel between that and music, because like for anybody that like produces or like for the most part like produces, when they start making beats, like they have no idea what they're doing for the most part, so they're just picking the most random sounds, the most random loops, and sometimes it sounds terrible, but like when it sounds good, it'll sound unique and it'll sound good. So I feel like that's something that you kind of tapped into.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you just need to play. Yeah. And then when you start exploring, that's when you start learning new things. But it's also nice to, like, I've definitely done some research, not really on color grading, but I guess like on different focal point lengths and stuff like that. Just more techie stuff. So when people ask me questions, I'm prepared. But I'm big on intuitive like process.
I hear that. I think that like no, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna ask you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you because I know that you like direct your music videos, and I think that's really cool. Yeah. So what's kind of the process when you come up with like the visuals for that? Like what? Because they're very like symbolic, I feel. Yeah,
especially recently. I think like my first ever music. I think I've done like 5-6 music videos like in my whole everything, and I feel like my very very first one, which you cannot find on my channel, was like it was like a very big learning curve, like, and it was like I tried to like over like make everything super, this is how it has to be at this point and this is how it has to be at that point. And then when I figured out my process, it's like drawing from all these things and like just letting the music like do the work for me, because I'm a very like visual person. So if I listen to something like, oh, this is the color orange or this is the color purple, and I can like go based off that and based on how I feel, because I feel like music will naturally take you to like a certain scenery, a certain like just a certain mood, and then you can draw inspirations from wherever you want just to fit that, and then compile that together, which is usually like the way that I do it, and then at the end you'll have a product that like more or less you're happy with.
Exactly. That kind of goes into just kind of like just like an intuitive process. Like you're just
exactly.
Like, it's not. I feel like once you try to calculate everything, you kind of get into like analysis paralysis.
I've never heard that term before, but that sounds crazy.
Analysis paralysis is when you just are stuck in like the analyzing stage and you're not. Nothing is like moving.
I hear that.
Like for example, for me, before I want to start anything, instead of just doing it, I'm like analyzing everything I have to do before.
I hear that.
Taking any risk. I mean, like to an extent, it's good to analyze, but when you're just stuck in that mind frame, you're never gonna get out. Or
I hear that, because I think at a certain point you just need to start, and then it'll kind of take you to this place and this place and this place, and then you'll kind of eventually get to where you want to go. Yeah, I feel like that's the way it is with most things. I feel like one art form that I need to like kind of look into more, or like, yeah, just kind of like, I think when like looking at visuals, there's so many different things that I want to like tackle and just understand, and I feel like just adding that knowledge while also still trying to be as intuitive as possible is very like, it's something pretty crucial to like development.
I agree with that. What I've learned for myself and just in life in general, not just in a creative way, is that when you start learning about a variety of different things, there's like this harmony in all of those things that you're learning that you can incorporate in like other things.
I definitely hear that.
So it's like you're taking away from everything that you learn from, and you get like a deeper understanding of other things.
Yeah, I 100% feel that. I also feel like there are so many links, like in common, like there are so many parallels between like different art forms, just different things that people do, and it just helps when you know at least like the figures in each like respective field, because it's like you can pull inspiration from how this person speaks or like their process, even though it's not like your medium or your platform that you do as like at all. I feel like I find a lot of inspiration from just anything. I find a lot of inspiration from like fashion designers, a lot of inspiration from visual artists, especially as of late. Photography is a big one.
Yeah.
I was almost gonna center, like I dropped an EP called Pangea, and I was almost gonna center the whole theme of it and like try and intersect like the theme that's already there with like a theme around like photography and like film. Like that's what the original theme was gonna be. I kind of stripped that part back a little bit, and there's like tiny sprinkles of that in there, like in some of the lyrics. But you know, like I respect that so much when people are kind of like cross platform, I guess.
It's not even something that's completely easy to do too.
Exactly.
Like you need to really not have your foot in both fields to really understand how that even translates.
Yeah.
But I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because I thought like we could like I prepared questions. I don't know. But one thing that I've realized, especially with like social media, do you think social media has had grave impacts on your art? And also, what, like, it's 2 in 1. Because of social media and the amount of access to art that we have, what are your thoughts on like imitations? Like, when do we draw the line between imitation and inspiration?
No, those are good questions.
Thank you.
I think
I was thinking a lot.
Yeah, no, I think for the first question, what I think with social media is that like we kind of at this point we know a little bit as to like the negative effects that it can have. And I think that right now it's just about controlling your narrative and kind of controlling what you see and what you put into like your personal space. So me personally, like I know people kind of get mad at people for unfollowing for some reason on Instagram, but for me, like I try and follow specifically exactly what I want to see and nothing else, like shit that I want to be inspired by, things that I want to like actively look at during my day and like feel like, okay, this added something to me, like, you know. And I think that kind of offsets that, because at least you're looking at something that inspires you as opposed to just looking at something for the sake of looking at it.
Exactly.
And then in terms of imitation, I think it's like, I don't know, it's almost like something that's more felt than seen. Like you know when it comes from a place that's not, okay, I like this specific idea from this thing and I'm going to put my own spin on it. I feel like imitation kind of comes in when it's more, I want to take this because I know it's doing well, or because I want what this person has, and then I'm not really going to add my own spin on it, or I'm just going to like filter it through like the most surface level, like the surface level way, and then just put it out like that. So I feel like that's kind of where the line gets crossed.
I agree. I feel like when I go, my relationship with social media, the way I feel like it impacted my art, I think that we all naturally just compare ourselves to other artists. So I actually had to like draw boundaries with myself with my social media, because I'm always like in this comparison mode.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this and it's getting this much attention.
Exactly.
But it's also like self-validating is so important as an artist, especially I feel like we're in times where everyone wants to be like a content creator.
Exactly.
And like it's getting more and more competitive, and we have so much access to each other and so much media. It's overstimulating, and you're like, fam, am I even good? Like, am I even gonna make it?
I think it's one of those things where now you can't really place, as weird as this sounds, you can't even place too much value on like how good you are in comparison to other people. I think there's always gonna be like a bunch of people that are like better than you, or that people may just like more than you, like,
yeah.
you know. And I think you just have to really decide like that you're gonna push like what you're doing to the max, and you're gonna build a community around what you're doing. And I think that like when you do that, you have a better chance at controlling your narrative and controlling your art. And I think that's like one of the most important things, especially now. I feel like a lot of people, especially the people that are super into the platforms and like social medias, especially, like it's not always a bad thing, but I feel like sometimes people get lost in their output, and sometimes their output isn't what they love, right?
Exactly.
So they get lost in that, and then it becomes this cycle of just kind of doing things to do them, and then they don't control their narrative anymore. Their community like doesn't like love them the same way that they would like. It's just, I don't know, it gets,
no, I get it, because then it's like I feel like it could kind of turn into a high in a way when you put something out and you're waiting for that validation, and then imagine you get all of this validation and it's like, oh, like overnight you're viral.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, like I can do this shit for real. Exactly. People love me. And then it's like, now you feel, I don't know, but I always have the fear of, what if I get so self-sacrificing to my audience, which is important to cater to your audience, but what if I get so self-sacrificing and I just, now it's like, oh, but I don't think they'll like, oh, but, and it's just like that thing where it's just my audience, and then it's like, I feel like that's when you really crack.
Yeah, I think that the thing that a lot of people have to remember is your audience it has to be a reflection of you. So if you're worried about, like, I don't think you should ever be at a point where you're worried about what your audience thinks. I think you should decide in that moment to weed out people who won't like what you like. And that's not a diss, that's not a negative thing. It's just, if you want to go down this path and there's a bunch of people that won't like it, but that's what you want, it's better to just build a community around what you want than like try and cater to some people. And then what if that goes wrong? Are you going to cater again until
exactly? And
like,
and it just goes back to being self-validating and being like, fam, you got here because you're good. Yeah. And people, like, they want to consume your art. I don't know. I just get anxious in a sense where I'm like, because you see so many artists that, you see their downfall. Like, so many great artists, and you see their downfall, and you're like, what happened? And it's like, there's just no boundaries. And it's like, when you are in the public eye, like, you're literally sacrificing everything. Like, it's like, boom. Like, I understand why people say, like, selling your soul, even, like, not if it's not literal, but it's like, once you're in the public, like
you don't done. Control. I think that's why controlling what you do is so important. Like, I just feel like the more you can control, the better it'll be, because if you get to build like the lifestyle that you want, the people that you want to interact with on a day-to-day, like, then I think that kind of like subsides a little bit, because you get to choose when you put yourself in that public eye, and you get to choose what you're in that public eye for. So I think that does a lot for just somebody's mental and just how you're navigating, like, whether that's art, whether it's different platforms. But no, Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. All right.
I had have another question for you.
Okay. All right.
And this is about I don't know how integrated you feel in the Toronto art scene, but do you have any opinions on, do you feel limited by the scene at all?
I don't think so at all. I think because I don't know, like the only the simplest way I can put it is like I'm myself. So like I'm not Remsen, who's affiliated with this, who's friends with this, who's like, I'm just myself. So I don't feel like I'm limited because everything that I can be is just based on who I am and what I can do, right? So I feel like as long as I keep being an individual and just keep being myself and just pushing what I have going on, like I don't think that limits me because I'm just my own entity, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. I agree. I feel like I try to tap into that.
Yeah.
To that mentality where you're just like, you need to have a good sense of self, which is essentially what you're saying. Like a strong sense of self, confidence in your art. Like people really can't get to you. And I think that I always say this, but I think that I went into things, and it's not even like I'm integrated into a scene specifically, just from the little I've seen and like what I've experienced. I think I went into it like La La Land, like I can just, do whatever I want. I don't need to network. I don't need to do all these things. Like I'll just do my thing, and then my work will speak for itself. But it's like there needs to be a balance between your dreams, and I know this is awful, like not awful, but it's like your dreams and reality. And it's like there needs to be like, you need to kind of silence that La La Land a little bit and be like realistic, because the way I am is I'm so introverted and I'm so like to myself that I'm like missing out on a lot of opportunities because I don't think I can network.
I hear that. I think it's perspective. I think you have to see it as like networking as like actually making like lasting people that could end up being like some of your good friends in the future, because I feel like going into like adulthood and like the rest of your life, like no friends are really guaranteed. Like right now, the people that we're friends with are based on proximity, common interests, which could change.
Exactly.
But like common interest is going to be the thing that probably stays the longest. So why not make more friends with common interests? I just see it like that. So
that's true. That's such an optimistic.
Yeah, I try and see things in that way, because like otherwise it's like why even do it?
No, you're right, because I feel like I went into it naively and I thought shit would be sweet, and it's not sweet. Not that it's not sweet. Like I'm acting like.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. It's just not like you can't just move entirely on your ones and without a team.
It's just not realistic
without a team
in this
or like
industry.
outside perspective.
Exactly.
I hear that.